Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. In Rawalpindi, a high-level army huddle has reviewed recent developments in the Afghan peace process and the security situation along the border with Afghanistan. Chaired by Army Chief General Javed Bajwa, the Corps Commanders Conference took notice of the recent cross-border attacks and regrouping of the terrorists in Afghanistan. The forum said Pakistan has taken effective border control measures and hopes that Afghan soil will not be used against it. The meeting also discussed the latest situation along the LOC and reaffirmed Pakistan's support to regional peace and stability. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington will be moving forward with the process to reopen the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem. He was addressing the media after meeting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah as part of his regional tour to bolster the Gaza ceasefire. Blinken said the U.S. will provide $5.5 million in immediate disaster assistance for Gaza and $32 million to the UN Relief Agency. Earlier in his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister, Blinken said the U.S. won't allow Hamas to benefit from the Gaza reconstruction. U.S. President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet in Geneva on the 16th of June. In a statement, the White House said the two leaders will discuss the full range of pressing issues as they seek to restore bilateral relations. The UN and the US have called on Mali's military to release the country's transitional leadership. In a joint statement, they strongly condemned the attempted coup that took place following a cabinet reshuffle. Security forces detained the president, prime minister, and defense minister of the interim government on Monday. Daily COVID-19 infections in India have dipped under 200,000 for the first time in 40 days. And the country also reported more than 3,500 deaths in the past 24 hours. Here in Pakistan, the virus has claimed 92 more lives and infected over 2,200 people overnight. Nationwide, the tally has risen to 20,400. Globally, there are 3.46 million fatalities and more than 167 million cases. And Australia's Sally Fitzgibbons has won the fifth leg of the 2021 World Surf League at Rottnest Island. She earned her 12th championship tour victory after defeating Joanne Defay of France. In the men's event, two-time champion Medina clinched the 16th victory of his career to extend his lead in the world standings. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. In Rawalpindi, a high-level army huddle has reviewed recent developments in the Afghan peace process and the security situation along the border with Afghanistan. Chaired by Army Chief General Javed Bajwa, the Corps Commanders Conference took notice of the recent cross-border attacks and regrouping of terrorists in Afghanistan. The forum said Pakistan has taken effective border control measures and hopes that Afghan soil will not be used against its territory. The meeting also discussed the latest situation along the LOC and reaffirmed Pakistan's support to regional peace and stability. The Army Chief also appreciated the military's support to civil administration in containing the ongoing third wave of COVID-19. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington will be moving forward with the process to reopen the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem. He was addressing the media following his meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah. Blinken said the U.S. will provide $75 million for development and economic assistance for Palestinians. He added that the U.S. will also provide $5.5 million in immediate disaster assistance for Gaza and $32 million to the UN Relief Agency. Earlier in his meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister, he said the U.S. will not allow humanitarian aid to benefit Hamas. Blinken's tour is aimed at bolstering the truce that was agreed in Gaza after the killings of nearly 250 Palestinians in 11 days of Israeli bombardment. Hours before his arrival, Israeli forces killed another Palestinian as tensions simmer. Despite the ceasefire, 19 people were also arrested in the occupied West Bank. In Pakistan, the Senate has passed a resolution calling for an end to Israel's blockade of Gaza and immediate humanitarian aid for Palestinians. The House condemned Israel's brutal use of force against Palestinians in the occupied territories. It said a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict is the only way forward. In his speech at the occasion, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the onus is now on the UN Security Council for maintaining peace in Gaza. He added that the forcible evictions of Palestinians further triggered the crisis in the besieged Strip. Qureshi also said the President of the UN General Assembly and Palestine's Foreign Minister will visit Pakistan soon. US President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet in Geneva on the 16th of June. In a statement, the White House said the two leaders will discuss the full range of pressing issues as they seek to restore bilateral relations. National security advisors of the two countries met earlier this week to discuss the preparations of the summit. The much-anticipated meeting comes nearly 3 years after Putin met then-President Donald Trump in Helsinki. The UN and the US have called on Mali's military to release country's transitional leadership. Forces detained the President, Prime Minister and Defense Minister of the interim government on Monday. This comes after a cabinet reshuffle in which two members of the junta that seized power in August were replaced. In a joint statement, the UN, African Union and the European Union said a delegation from the West African states will visit Bamako in order to resolve the attempted coup. The group said it rejects in advance any act imposed by coercion, including forced resignations. EU leaders have agreed on a set of sanctions against Belarus, including a ban on the use of the bloc's airspace. In a statement, the diplomats called on the International Civil Aviation Organization to urgently probe the incident. Brussels also demanded the immediate release of a journalist detained by Minsk after diverting a passenger plane. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Minsk's move is a threat to civil aviation safety. Meanwhile, Latvia expelled Belarusian diplomats in a tit-for-tat move. The rift started after Latvia replaced Belarus's national flag with an opposition flag at an ice hockey tournament. Iran's election vetting body, the Guardian Council, has approved 7 candidates for the June 18 presidential elections. In an announcement, the council said just 7 out of 592 candidates passed the vetting process and their names have been sent to the Interior Ministry. The list did not specify the names of the approved candidates. Iran will go to polls next month to elect a new government as President Hassan Rouhani's government completes 2 terms in office. According to Iran's constitution, a sitting president cannot run for a 3rd time in succession. India's daily COVID-19 cases have dipped under 200,000 for the first time in 40 days. The country reported more than 3,500 deaths over the past 24 hours. Globally, there are over 3.4 million fatalities and more than 167 million cases. More in this report.
Although India has seen relief in the numbers of daily infections, many issues remain. Experts warn that 140 million migrant workers are at risk of being left out of the vaccination program, despite being at high risks of illness. Analysts say the fatality rate in major cities is much higher than the national average. In Delhi, the deaths rate topped 2.54% in the first 3 weeks of May, compared to the national average, which stood at 1.14%. In the second wave of coronavirus, India's rural areas have been the worst affected.
The state government has deployed the healthcare in charge of the village to primary healthcare center of slightly bigger towns. There are neither nurses nor doctors here for months. The rule is that they have to come at least twice a week to the center, but they don't even come twice a year.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says about 39% of the American population is fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The situation in South America is not so promising. According to a survey, 1 in 5 Brazilian cities reported a shortage of vaccine doses last week. This too when the country's death toll is approaching 450,000. Over in Mexico, a large majority of the country is still waiting for the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Hundreds of teachers, parents, and students protested against the government plans to reopen schools in such a scenario.
Accelerate the vaccination program before there is a return to physical classes. We believe that given the conditions we are going through, the program is very slow. At this time, not even 20% of the population is vaccinated. And given the terrible conditions of the schools we attend, it's very hard to return to the classes.
Malta has become the first EU country to vaccinate up to 70% of the adult population with at least one jab. Meanwhile, in Asia, Taiwan has recorded 6 new deaths from COVID-19 for the second day in a row. Malaysia reported 61 deaths, its highest daily toll since the pandemic began. Sri Lanka has extended its ongoing travel ban for another 2 weeks as health experts warn of a possible breakdown of the country's health system.
In Pakistan, 92 people lost their lives due to coronavirus in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the death toll has risen to 20,400. They said the virus has infected over 2,200 people overnight. Officials say more than 905,000 people have been infected so far, of which 823,000 people have recovered. There are over 62,000 active cases in the country. More than 4,700 patients are in critical condition. Meanwhile, Pakistan has developed a COVID-19 vaccine with the help of Chinese experts. In a tweet, Special Assistant to Prime Minister on Health said the vaccine, named PakVac, passed rigorous testing. Pakistan has reaffirmed its support to the African nations for peace, progress and prosperity. In a statement on Africa Day, Foreign Office spokesperson said Islamabad is committed to forging stronger partnership with Africa in all spheres of cooperation. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said Pakistan extend felicitations on the 58th anniversary of the African Union. He said Pakistan has been engaged in the peacekeeping process across the continent since the 1960s. In India, nearly 2 million people have been evacuated in Orissa and West Bengal to escape a powerful storm barreling towards the eastern coast. Cyclone Yas is set to turn into a very severe cyclonic storm with wind speeds of up to 177 kilometers per hour. The Met Department has warned that high winds can destroy houses, uproot electric poles and disrupt railway services in coastal areas. This comes just 10 days after Cyclone Taukte hit India's west coast and killed more than 150 people. The situation has complicated India's efforts to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Myanmar, anti-coup activists continue their calls for democracy despite of violent crackdowns and arbitrary arrests. In Moniva, locals marched on the full moon day festival of Kasoon in defiance of the military regime. A flash mob protest took place in Yangon, where the junta has imposed martial law. Witnesses say a bridge has been blown up in Hopin township of Kachin state, making the road inaccessible. Earlier, an American editor was detained in Yangon while boarding a flight to Malaysia. Danny Fenster's news organization says he has been transferred to Yangon's insane prison. An advocacy group says the military has killed 824 people since the coup. China has slammed the United Kingdom for interfering in its internal matters under the guise of human rights. In a briefing, Xinjiang government officials condemned a UK Uyghur tribunal investigating claims of genocide. They said the tribunal is not a judicial body and has no legal basis for establishment. Officials added the so-called investigations and trials are merely being used to attack Xinjiang and smear China. 7 people have died following a toxic gas leakage at a food processing factory in China's Sichuan province. Authorities say a bamboo shoot factory in the city of Yibin was undergoing equipment maintenance. They say all 7 victims first slipped into coma and later died after medical treatment failed to revive them. Officials said another person who was hospitalized is in stable condition. They added an investigation into the incident is underway. In the U.S., rallies and vigils are set to take place across the country to mark the first anniversary of George Floyd's death. Floyd was killed at the hands of police in Minneapolis, sparking a wave of protests across the world under the banner Black Lives Matter. In a tweet, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. remembers Floyd as a credible force for human rights around the world. President Biden will meet with the family of George Floyd at the White House. The former police officer who killed Floyd faces up to 40 years in prison. In Peru, at least 14 people, including 2 children, have been killed by the Shining Path rebel group in a remote hamlet. This comes ahead of the country's presidential election on June the 6th. The military says pamphlets encouraging Peruvians not to vote were found at the site. In a statement, they termed the incident an act of genocide, saying the rebels called such attacks as a form of social cleansing. However, the statement assured Peruvians of a secure electoral process. The incident took place in a mountainous region where 70% of cocaine is produced in South American country. Jeff Bezos has reclaimed his throne as the world's richest person after briefly losing his title to French fashion tycoon Bernard Arnault. More in this report.
The 2 men entered the weekend on level terms. Both were worth $186 billion. Shares in Arnault's luxury goods conglomerate, LVMH, rallied in the second half of last week. LVMH stock performed even better on Monday, closing nearly 1% higher. That boosted Arnault's fortune by $1.7 billion, enough for him to briefly eclipse Bezos. However, Amazon's shares also ticked up more than 1% somewhere around midnight, making Bezos $2.4 billion richer than his short-term predecessor. As per business publisher Forbes, the Amazon CEO's net worth currently stands at $188.4 billion. Arnault has briefly ranked as the world's richest person several times in the past.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Brazilians obsessed with the renowned New York City Police Department have refurbished their vehicles to impersonate their idols. Details in this report.
Pedestrians may need a moment to get their bearings as they witness an NYPD motorcade passing in Brazil's biggest city. Behind the swirling red lights and blaring sirens are a group of Brazilian fans obsessed with one of the world's most recognizable police forces. Inspired by the TV cop shows like Law and Order, it's their hobby to refurbish NYPD cars and wear their uniform.
It really gets people's attention. Many associate it with movies. Some don't understand what this car is doing here.
Impersonating a police officer is a crime in Brazil and many other countries. However, the group says they are getting away with it as they are not impersonating the Brazilian police.
Sometimes there is confusion with the vehicles. People think it is a real vehicle that is patrolling the streets of Sao Paulo or is helping the local police in a specific operation.
Brazil has a history of crimes involving police impersonation, including a 2019 heist. Investigators say robbers used the federal police livery to enter an airport and steal $40 million worth of gold and other metals.
And other business updates. The EU says tensions with the UK stem from Brexit and not the Northern Ireland Protocol. In a briefing, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen said there is no alternative to the full and correct implementation of the protocol. Leyen said implementing the protocol is the only solution to ensure peace in Northern Ireland. She added that the mechanism is critical for protecting the integrity of the bloc single market. The protocol designed to protect the peace process by avoiding a hard border for Ireland. It has angered unionists by effectively creating a barrier between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This ties the region to a range of EU customs and regulatory rules. Wall Street stocks have climbed at open for a second day due to optimism about an economic recovery. A surge in the shares of airlines and cruise lines bolstered the overall market sentiment. The indices of S&P 500 and DJI traded marginally higher, while Nasdaq Composite was also up 0.25%. Meanwhile, the oil prices have risen as investors tempered expectations of an early return of Iran supplies to international crude markets. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. The latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.